film War Horse has been grabbing the headlines this week. Here are a few pictures of the film behind me here. It tells the fictional story of Joey, a horse that went to war in 1914. Now, there's been huge interest, and I'm sure you know, in the film, which gives a fresh insight into the role of horses in the conflict. Over 1 million horses went to war and just a few survived. Well, tonight we have the story of this horse, the Bay Thoroughbred, I beg your pardon, from the Isle of Wight, who survived the battles at the Somme and Passchendaele and returned home a hero. Here's Steve Humphrey.
It was here, on the Isle of Wight, that Jack Seeley and his horse formed a partnership that was to last 33 years. Both the horse and the rider survived the horrors and the slaughter of the First World War. By the time peace came, the Bay Thoroughbred, called Warrior, had earned his place in history. The soldiers called him simply the horse the Germans couldn't kill. On a cold grey morning on the Western Front in 1918, Warrior and General Jack Seeley were immortalised in this painting by one of the country's finest artists, Sir Alfred Munnings. The survival of Warrior and his rider amidst the carnage of the Western Front was indeed a miracle. Around 1 million horses were sent to the Western Front by the British. Only 1 in 10 came home. So how big would Warrior have been?
He was, well, logically, a little bit smaller than this.
Jack Seeley's grandson is the writer, broadcaster and former jockey, Brough Scott.
We in our family all say he was the best and certainly the bravest horses who ever lived, but he was certainly the luckiest. I mean, I've actually counted up 11 different occasions when he should have been killed.
Brough has republished the book that Jack Seeley wrote in 1934 about his famous horse.
Lady Munston presents the prizes, including the Sword of Honour.
A soldier, cabinet minister and friend of Winston Churchill, Jack was also a member of the lifeboat crew at Brooke on the Isle of Wight, where his family had a large estate.
Its first lifeboat was launched by the grandmother of Major General Seeley, whom you see here, the taller figure with the white cap. He's been with the crew for over 30 years, and by the way, he received a peerage in the King's birthday honours.
His horse Warrior was born at Yafford on the Isle of Wight in 1908, and Jack Seeley first rode him here at Sidling Pool near the village of Brooke a few years later. The pleasant days they spent here were in stark contrast with what was to come.
Horses had a terrible time, This was 4 years, non-stop shelling and things like that. Men being killed beside you all the time. Tens of thousands of people a day, and ditto with the horses.
Warrior was at some of the biggest and deadliest battles of the conflict, including Ypres, the Somme and Passchendaele. And near Amiens, with Jack Seeley in the saddle, he took part in a crucial cavalry charge that checked a German advance.
He was a general, and he led the signal troop. Well, I mean, that's meant to be a lieutenant, but he was going to go up first with Warrior.
After the war, Jack Seeley and Warrior returned home to Mottiston Manor on the Isle of Wight, where they enjoyed many peaceful years together, including visits from royalty.
They went through all those adventures together and survived, and then they lived their happy life in that post-war era together and grew old together. So I think they knew each other from cradle to grave.
The end for Warrior came in 1941, when food shortages in the Second World War led to the old horse being put down, just a few weeks short of his 33rd birthday. There had been mutterings about the amount of corn the horse was eating. Jack Seeley died in 1947. The survival of horse and rider through the mud and carnage of World War I was truly remarkable, and Warrior will forever be remembered as the Isle of Wight's real war horse.
Extraordinary tale, isn't it? Tomorrow, we're going to tell you about the grey